All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the tutorial on developing action-oriented dashboards in Tableau. Or you could also call them interactive dashboards, but we're specifically going to use the action um, technique or action feature of Tableau. Instead of just using the filters, we're going to use some actions. So we're basically going to create some different maps, a profitability by state map, a scatter plot. We're going to use a bubble chart and a bar chart, and we're going to use the bubble chart kind of as the major action filter. And then we'll look at more of the dashboards and kind of use the action buttons to dive really deep into our data using the actions in the dashboards. So you should learn a lot. I already have Tableau open here, so I'm just going to use the sample superstore data. So just go ahead and click on that, and let's get started. So let's create our individual worksheet. The first one we're going to do is a profitability map. So I want you to drag the state dimension into the label button and the profit measure. So we're going to do profit by state. Then I'm going to go here under show me, and I'm going to just check maps. And if you have a previous version of Tableau, it might be called a filled map. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And now you have the map by profit. If you can see, I'm going to go ahead and change the color. So if you go to color in the marks card, click edit colors, red, green, diverging. I really like this one just because to me it's really simple. Green means good, red means bad, and just click apply. Okay, I think it's just a really simple way to determine this is profit. So green, California, New York, Washington State are pretty good, and Texas, Tennessee, not doing so hot. So a good way to really just kind of zoom in and recognize patterns quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and label this. So I'm going to drag state into the label button. And I'm also, because I don't really know what the numbers are, I'm going to drag profit into label as well. So now you can actually get a better idea of what's going on. Because I want to add some filters for later when we do our interactive dashboard or action-oriented dashboard, I'm going to go ahead and create the same filters on multiple graphs. So let's start with order date. So drag order date into filters, and I'm going to select number of years. So you have a lot of different types, and I encourage you to play around with these. You're not going to break anything. So I just clicked number of years. Next. I'm just going to do all for now. Click apply. And nothing will change because all years are selected. Click OK. Now filters will kind of be a master filter of our data. And then I'm going to select region. So I don't really like how this is labeled. Region doesn't really make sense because this is really just one country in our data set here. But if you go down to region, you can drag that into filters, select all, click apply. Hopefully you're doing a little foreshadowing of what we're actually going to be filtering this stuff by. And let's add another filter. Let's do city. So city, there's going to be a lot of cities here. Click all, click apply, and click OK. So now we have our profitability map. I'm just going to go ahead and say profitability by state. And it's always a good idea to label your maps so you don't forget. And it's just good practice to label your maps. So let's create a new worksheet and do the scatter plot. Okay, so let's create the scatter plot graph. So we already created our new worksheet, sheet 2. We're going to go ahead and drag sales into the columns and profit into the rows. And we're just creating the scatter plot graph. We're just kind of getting it started. So next, let's slice the data by region. So you want to drag region into color. So let's see what this does. Basically, this marks card, you can click on these buttons, but you can also just drag stuff into them, and that gives more depth to your worksheets. So you can drag anything in here. You don't have to explicitly follow this tutorial. I encourage you to experiment, and I don't know if you've watched previous videos, but you can click this back button up here, this undo button, which is Control Z also. So I just did that on my keyboard, and you're not going to break anything. So if you just drag another dimension in here, just see what happens, see if you like it, because ultimately it's your story that you're telling. Also, I don't really like the size of this, so I'm going to do fit width here. So now it's a little bigger. Okay, so I dragged region. I'm going to go ahead and just fit width again, and then drag region into color. So you can actually kind of see what's going on. So that, if you notice, the region is divided into central, east, south, and west. Also, let's give it some more depth. So we already have sales profit by region. And really, Tableau is great because you can give things a lot of depth and very quickly. You know, it hasn't been very long, and we've already made some pretty cool graphs. So go over to segment, and then let's drag that into shape. We only have 4 shapes now, so drag that so shape is highlighted. You can see it's gray, and now we have multiple shapes. So if you look at the legend over here, we have 4 regions and 3 shapes. Consumer is a circle, corporate is a square, and home office is the plus sign. Now these shapes are pretty small, so click size, and you can kind of resize the shapes however size you want to. I think that looks pretty good. And if you hover over, you can see the data. So if you notice, you have 2 greens here, 2 measures, sales, profit, and 2 blues. So you have region and segment. And if you notice what's going on with the marks card, this is what that's called, the marks card. Region corresponds to this button color, which is right here. Segment corresponds to this button shape, which is also over here. If you wanted to change the shapes, you can click the button shape. I just clicked it. These are default, but there's a lot of different options you can use. You can also upload your own pictures, which I'll show you how to do in another video. But for now, let's just leave them as default. You can also click on one of these, like an X, and then assign that to consumer. If you clicked assign palette, basically that would do that. And then let's just leave it as it is. So we'll explore shapes in another video. So this looks pretty good. Now we want to add trend lines just so we can see what's going on. So if you right click here on your graph, go to trend lines, show trend lines, you can see that these 2 trend lines are pretty good. They're the red and the teal color. And then this one, not bad, but the blue, which is the central region, is trending downward. So if you really interpret that, the profit is going down when the sales is going up, which doesn't seem like a relationship you want to have. Okay. Now let's go ahead and save that. So Scatterplot sales and profit. There's a lot of different names. You can name this graph, of course. But let's create another graph. Let's create the bubble chart, and we'll use this as our action going forward. Okay, let's start creating the bubble chart. So let's get profit and drag that into the color button, and then drag sales into the size button, and then customer name into the detail button. So that creates a lot of, you can experiment with that too. this is pretty hard to read here. So basically, I don't really like this graph. Go to show me, and all the way down, packed bubbles, click that, and I think it's a little easier to read there. So if you want to change the color also to kind of keep it uniform, red, green, diverging, click apply, click OK. And what do we have here? We have the size, profit, color is sales. So, we're keeping with the theme and story of our graph. Color, sales, green, good, size, profit, big, good. So you really want a big green bubble, right? You don't really want a small bubble with sales. Profit is the size, or small bubble with profit, I'm sorry. And then the sales being red. You can see over here that the lowest sale is $5. So you don't really want that. Okay. So let's give the bubble chart some labels because it looks pretty bare here. Let's drag segment into labels. Now let's drag category into labels. And then drag sales into labels. And drag profit into labels. And this will show up. The labels are kind of by default not showing up because there's so many different bubbles. But remember, we're using this as our kind of action filter. So when these bubbles go down and we filter everything, say by category or something, then the labels will actually show up. Then let's edit the labels. So you don't want them to show up right now because that looks like a mess. So unclick that. But when we do label the bubble chart, we need to know the difference between the profit and the sales. And right now, if it just showed up, then it would just be two different numbers. So we need to give this text. So what I did, I'm just going to do that again. Go into labels, go to text, click this, because these will just be the sum of profit and sum of sales numbers. So I'm just going to type profit, colon, space, and I'm going to type sales, colon, space. And if you want to change the text, that's fine. 12, the default. There's a lot of different things you can do. You can make it colorful. We'll just go ahead. You can experiment, of course, with this if you want to. So that will basically, when there aren't so many bubbles, again, you kind of have to do some foreshadowing. So when we filter this, we're going to see the actual labels on the bubbles, and it will make more sense. So it should look something like this. Let's also drag product name because that's probably a pretty good label too. So it's a lot of bubbles. It looks cool, kind of like a little molecule, right? But for practical purposes, this is probably too much unless you're going to make an interactive dashboard, and that's exactly what we're doing. And you're planning on making these bubbles a little bit more readable, okay? So it should look something like this, and we need to save this graph. Bubble chart, sales and profit. Okay. Now let's create a bar graph. Here. Okay, so let's make a horizontal bar graph that shows sales and profit for the product names, categories, and customer segments. So what we first need to do is drag category into rows. And then we need to drag segment. I think I said segment first. So you want to make sure segment is first because it's kind of a data hierarchy thing. So you have consumer, corporate, and then the category within these hierarchies. So kind of pay attention. I know I was lost a little bit there for a second, but consumer, corporate, home, office, and then these are the categories of products within these things. So these are kind of the big, heading 1 basically, and these would be the heading 2 if you were kind of writing a report. So make sure you have segment first, then you have category, and then we'll have product name next. So I'm going to go ahead and just add all members there. Then I'm going to drag sales into columns. Actually, this doesn't make sense. So let's go drag this down, segment, category, and product name. Yeah, I was wondering why this didn't really make sense. You don't really want to visualize the data like that. So if you go back, you'll kind of notice that this doesn't make sense visually. So all I did was undo. And this is a perfect example of not really getting that correctly and kind of just going forward. Because it looks good here, but then when you add product name, it's going to be hard for your audience to read. So basically, I'm just redoing what I just did. I'm dragging segment into rows, category into rows, and product name into rows. And now we have, a nice, easy to read table. So you have segment, category, product name, consumer, furniture, and this is a lot easier. But we need some actual numbers here. So let's drag sales into columns. And then that kind of populates what's going on here. So if you go back to our graphs, we might be making a lot of sales. So we've got a profitability by state. Sure, California is making really green, but what is that really doing in terms of profit? So we're kind of doing a sales by profit comparison. So if you go back to the horizontal chart, let's drag profit into color. And let's stick with our color scheme. So go to edit colors, red, green, diverging, apply, okay. So now you kind of have the red and green that are seamless across your graphs. And let's add a filter to the graph so we can use the filter later. Let's drag customer name into filter. Select all, and this will give us a nice level of detail when we actually filter it, because you might want to just look at the individual customer name to see what's going wrong or with which product basically that customer has ordered. Also, this is kind of hard to read. So if you hover over this graph and you look at this small little icon, I don't know why Tableau makes it so small, but they do. Just click that, and now you have a much easier horizontal bar graph that's divided into consumer, furniture, and then all the products. So now you can go down and say consumer office supplies, products that are high in sales, but this has a big sales number, but it's also red, or not deep red, but kind of red. So you're like, what's going on with the HON 540 series or 5400 series in the furniture category in the consumer segment? I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to name this, let's go with product horizontal bar graph. And hopefully you have something that looks similar to this. And now we're going to create our dashboard. So what I want you to do is click on this little icon down here. If you notice, this icon is for a new worksheet. So hopefully this one is for a new dashboard and this one is for a new story. So click on this middle one for a new dashboard. So let's create our initial dashboard. So basically double click the profitability by sales graph. And then let's put the scatter plot on here. I don't really like it right there, so I'm going to undo that. You can actually just drag the scatter plot. So it has these little areas that you can put the scatter plot. Since these graphs are big and the scatter plot is really kind of a horizontal graph, I'm going to just put it right here. And then I told you we're going to use our bubble chart as kind of a filter. So I can just drag it over. And what we're going to do is make this floating. And we're going to drag it so that you can kind of see it in the white space of a chart. Let's get rid of the title. There, now we can see it. So this is going to be our filter. So I'm basically strategically placing this in white space, and we're going to be able to click on one of these and filter the whole graph by this bubble. So hopefully that makes sense. It should make more sense. And we can always replace this, of course. So again, if you missed that, if you click on this little down arrow, each of these has a little down arrow when you click on them. These are basically fixed. So if you make them floating, like I did this, you can manipulate the visualizations a lot easier. Okay? And then what I'm going to do now is remove these titles because I don't really, I mean, you kind of can make sense of them. So just right click and hide the actual title. So now hopefully your dashboard is looking a little bit like this. And let's add some interactive filters. So if you remember, we added some filters to this graph or this visualization first. So I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go to filters and then select, which one do you think we should do? How about year of order date? So that puts the filter right here. Then we're going to do our other filter. So all I'm doing is clicking in this graph, clicking this down arrow, going to filters, and then adding these exact filters. Okay, so let's add the year of order date, and then let's do the region, and let's do the where is the filter? Sorry. And the city. Sorry. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of city data here. So I recommend changing the look of a lot of these filters. So what you want to do, let's start with city. Click on the city filter, click the down arrow, and then experiment. I mean, you don't have to do this. We can go with a single value drop down. So now you can select, of course, we'll filter this by state or something, so it won't have as many pieces of information. Region's getting a little cluttered here, so click the down arrow and maybe you can select a single value drop down as well. And then year of order date, if you just want to kind of experiment, you can go to slider. So 2017, 2016, 2018, all. So I guess there's not a lot of data for the central region. So I'm just going to put these back to all so you can actually see some information. I don't really like this slider filter. So I'm going to go to, I like drop downs if you haven't noticed. So year, all these are selected, and then you can kind of select 2016. Maybe if we make this a list, oh, I guess we can only select one. Okay, so we can kind of see that there's 4. I think that makes a little more sense. Also, if you wanted to make this a little bit bigger, you can click here. It's kind of default size. You can experiment like this, fixed size, desktop browser. You can go full screen. Maybe that makes it a little bit better. So it's up to you. It kind of depends on where you are. A laptop browser, desktop browser, generic desktop. This one looks pretty good to me. Now you can kind of see the filter. If you want to do this, you can just double click that. Year, okay. Now that looks a little bit better. We have some year, region, city, and we should be able to filter this in a second. So if you want to make these filters a little bit, fill in some of this white space over here, you can also float these filters. So it depends on where you want them. If you want this area to, be your filter area, we might want to change this back to a drop-down. Oops. So undo, always good. I just did Control Z. So make this floating region year. Make this floating city. And it's totally up to you. You can resize that so they all kind of look the same. I'm just basically dragging like that. It's totally up to you how you want to organize your dashboard. That looks pretty good. Maybe we could do a single value slider. I think that looks pretty good. So you can just kind of rotate. All right, let's just go with that, and you can kind of fiddle with it as you see fit. So let's play around with the filters and kind of apply a lot of these to our worksheet. Notice that they're really only filtering this map because we only added it to this map. So all, east, all. Now we need to actually apply these to all the worksheets. So in each filter, select this down button again and go to all using this data source. So boom. And then this needs a little bit, move that up there. Region, all using this data source. All using this data source. Now, if you go to the year, you'll notice that everything in this graph is filtered. Now, if that changes how you organized everything, well, Tableau didn't like that. I'll go back. So again, undo is your friend here. Now we're going to add the actions to the filters. Okay, let's add our actions here. So go to Dashboard, Actions, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be able to click on a state, and it's going to filter every single graph that's on our dashboard. So for example, I'm going to click California, and that's going to filter everything, the scatter plot and the bubble chart, into the data associated with California. So click Add Action, and then what I want to do is filter. So I don't want to highlight anything. I just kind of want to filter the data by clicking on a graph. So click filter, and I'm going to just say state, click action. And basically what you want to do is source your source for the action is the profitability by state. So remember that's the name of this graph, the state map graph. I want to click select because that actually means when I click something, you could also click hover, and that would filter it too, but that gets kind of messy once you start hovering over everything. Everything moves a lot. So click select and then do run on a single select only. So this just kind of makes everything cleaner when you just single select one state. Your target sheets are going to be all of them. I want to show all the values and all fields. So basically click OK. And then click OK again. And now if you click on Oregon, you'll notice that, let's make this bubble graph a little bit bigger now. So if you notice that dashboard design kind of changes as you go along. You still can't really see these bubbles, but that's okay. Let's filter everything by Montana. It really just kind of depends on the size of the bubbles over here, whether you can see everything. And now once you click on the state, notice our filters over here didn't include state. So that's kind of why I'm doing this. Texas, it's changing both the bubble graph and the scatter plot. So we just kind of click in the white space. 2018, these are our other filters. All, click state for all. Okay, so that's really how you create an action there, a select action. And so what I want to do is we created an action for the state up here. Okay, I got it working. Sorry about that. So when you click California, this filters basically the scatter plot and the bubble chart. So the bubble chart is, pretend we're designing a dashboard here. I want to make the bubble chart show only a few pieces of data because there's too much going on here, and I think we would all agree with that. So I'm going to add an action to the scatter plot that actually we can click one of these little buttons and that will filter the bubble chart. So this enables you to really narrow in your story. So for example, I could click California, and then I could zoom in on the west region, and when I click that, that will filter the bubbles because there's too many bubbles with just California. Because California is a big state, so they have a lot of customers, right? So go to dashboard. Let's add another action. Filter. The source will be the scatter plot. And the target, we don't want everything to change. We just want the bubble chart to change. So I'm going to do select and then click OK and click OK again. So again, I can click this and then I can click this. And it doesn't narrow the bubbles down too much. So maybe we need more detail in the scatter plot. So again, pretend you're a dashboard designer. This is all an iterative process. So let's go back to the scatter plot sales and profit. Customer name, if we go back to our dashboard, there's a lot of different customer names. So if you go to the bubble chart, we have customer name here, and that kind of made it really, really, really bubbly, basically. So if I want to kind of filter this by customer name, I'm going to need to add that to the scatter plot. So if I go back to the scatter plot, go to customer name, go to detail, now I have a lot of stuff that I can filter. So if I add that, all I did was drag that. I'm going to undo customer name into the detail. Boom. Go back to dashboard. The action should still work. So I'm going to filter it by California. And then now I can hover over this. This name is Rick Wilson, Sean Christensen, Robert Marley. And I'm going to click here. Boom. Now we have less bubbles, right? You can kind of reset these. So click, all you got to do is click kind of out of the white space. So say your boss says, what's going on in Wisconsin? Or maybe let's do that red. What's going on in Ohio? So I'm going to filter it by Ohio. Looks like the trend line is going down. What's going on with customer name Cindy Stewart? It looks like Cindy Stewart, the product that Cindy bought was the Netgear Range Max wireless router. The profit that we're making is basically nothing, even though it cost $60. So maybe we could say, the Netgear is giving us a little bit of problem. What's going on with this person? Again, product name Sony, not really giving us a lot. So now you're getting a level of detail that you haven't really been able to get before. So to me, this isn't really even enough detail because we have California. You can go down here, Lena. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Maybe we should be able to click the bubble button. I mean, we have these filters, we have this filter, and we have this filter. But we also, remember, have our product graph. So maybe we can click on this and say what products are really struggling. And to do that, let's make a second dashboard. So go down here. I just clicked, I'll just undo that. So I just clicked the new dashboard button. And we have our chart here. I just double clicked it. And let's make an action that we can actually click on the bubble chart and see the product graph. So let's create our action. So go back to the dashboard, clear everything just so it looks a little pretty. I'm just clicking on the white space. Go to dashboard, click actions. Let's add another action. So add the action. Again, go to filter. And what we want to do, again, is click on the bubble chart. So dashboard 1, you can select now. We have a couple dashboards. Bubble chart, select, because we want to click on it. Target sheet, hopefully you understand now. Target sheet is dashboard 2. Of course, we should probably name these, not dashboard 1, dashboard 2, but that's okay. Target sheet product horizontal bar graph. Click OK. Click OK again. So now let's filter everything by Washington. And then now that we have these detailed customer names, Fred Hopkins. Hey, Fred Hopkins has a green, kind of a middle, and a deeper red. So let's see what's going on here with Fred Hopkins. The green one is the segment corporate technology. Product name is the Canon copier, and it looks pretty good. So now if we go back to this product name, look at the sales product bar graph, looks pretty good. And then this one looks pretty good. Okay, now if we kind of clear that out. Okay, so basically what's happening now is when I'm clicking this, it's showing the name of the customer, but what should be happening is when I click the bubble chart, it should be showing all of the products. So again, the joys of dashboarding. What I'm going to do now is you have to kind of figure out, well, what's going wrong here, because a lot of things could go wrong. So basically what's happening is when I click here, if you look at the this little card that pops up, the reason it's filtering it by the customer name is because it's the first select in this little card. So if the region was above customer name, it would filter to the bubble chart by region. But now it's filtering by customer name. So I'm going to click customer name, and all these are Adrian customer name. However, if you hover over the bubble charts, you'll notice that the category is actually the first label, not the customer name. So when I click on this, it's just filtering by the office supplies category. So what I want to do is actually show all the products here by clicking this button, the bubble chart associated with Adrian or whoever the customer name actually is. So I'm going to click out of everything. Because this is in the bubble chart, you can just either go to sheet or go back to the sheet. I'm just going to go to sheet. And if you look in your marks card down here, it looks like, so this matters. I want to show the product name, and it looks like category is before. So remember, it filters whatever is on the top. So if you kind of get rid of category here, then if you go back, okay, so I kind of figured out what's going on. When you click the bubble chart, it's actually filtering it by product name. So it only shows, it's like when I click on this, it just shows the actual product name. And I want it to show the customer name. So let's X out of this. Let's go back to the bubble chart. And I don't really want to show this, so I'm going to get rid of that. And then what it should do is filter it by this top category. And for some reason, it's filtering it by product name, but now it should work with consumer name. So all I did was click this little, you could probably just go like that as well, or I just clicked this little minus button, and that should do the trick. So let's go here, filter by California, let's do Washington, and then customer name, Fred. And now we see Fred has 2 products here. Technology doing really well, and then the Square credit card reader not doing so hot. So if you want to do a little bit more iteration here, just to make this graph a little easier to read for your boss, I already forgot the person's name. You know, you want to go back, all you see is Fred. You don't really, it's kind of bad design. So go back to your bar graph, and remember this is segment, category, product name, and just go over here to customer name, double click that, or you can drag this over here, and then it will show the customer name. So it seems like a lot of data here, but once we go, you know, Montana, say this, well, Montana's so small, go here, and now we can say, this is the customer name, Jas O'Carroll, these are the products, office supplies. So you get a lot of information out of this. Okay, now let's do something really fun. Because a lot of these products are kind of weird and you don't probably know what they are. And this is the last thing we're going to do. We're going to create a Google URL search based on clicking this product name. So it's pretty easy to do. Let's go to the dashboard, go to actions, add actions, URL, dashboard 2 based on this graph, select. And you can do this with really any URL. I would experiment with a couple. So this is the URL for the Google search. So it's just google.com/search question Q equals Q is query. And then we need it to give it something to query. So if you click this play little right arrow, let's do by product name. And you can do this without, if your data is anything, you can add a little Google search here. So now it will query whatever text is in the product name. And basically you can create a new browser tab, so Tableau will actually open your browser. If you don't really have a web page object, I'm going to make a web page object. I'm going to rename this to product name Google search. So you can feel free to experiment with that. Click OK, click OK. And what you need to do is see this objects over here. You can drag this over. You don't have to do an edit URL because this action will automatically just go to the URL. Click OK. And there's nothing here because we haven't selected anything. So basically you just select this and it's associated with that Iveco high-tech manual binding system. And it Googled that and there you go. This is kind of small, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So now you don't even have to leave your dashboard when you're searching for a product. So to get the full effect, let's kind of X out of all these filters. And let's say we sent this to your boss. Maybe scoot this over so it's a little more user-friendly. This is just me being a little nitpicky. So you have all these filters. You have the legend over here. You have the ability to see the state and profit over America, a scatterplot with different customer names. And I apologize for missing that detail of customer name, but I think it's good practice that it's hard to build dashboards and say, well, what do I really want to look at? Then you have this bubble chart you're going to use to go to the next dashboard. And hopefully this gives you some creativity, some kind of inspiration going forward. So let's look at, for example, Texas. Texas trend line easily going down. What's going on with the sales here? Luke Foster, profits really bad. The sales are really bad. Click on that. He has 3 products. Can I click here? You can see that here are the products. Looks like he has 4 products. I must have missed one. So consumer furniture. I don't know what this really is. This was left over from the previous search. And the global value mid-black manager's chair. Oh, it looks like a pretty nice chair. Sells pretty well. What about this? DAX clear channel poster frame. I'm not really sure what that is. Looks like it has bad reviews. 2.5 diameter. Click here. It's just a really easy way to get from a really high level. So we reset everything here to get kind of a high level, well, the sales and profit to kind of a customer detail, a little bit of detail here, and then down to the product level itself. So hopefully you've learned a lot. I made a couple of mistakes along the way, and you are definitely going to make mistakes, but that's how you learn. And hopefully, well, I forgot to rename the dashboards. So I'll let you go ahead and rename your dashboards. But hopefully you can impress someone or yourself. And remember, this stuff takes a lot of work. Even though it seems easy, it's definitely not. And it's an iterative process for sure. So thank you for sticking with me and happy visualizing.